Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who formed the human body with skill, creating the body's many pathways and openings. It is well known before your throne of glory that if one of them be wrongly opened or closed, it would be impossible to endure and stand before you. Blessed are you, Adonai, who heals all flesh, working wondrously. And I'd like to just mention the people with dysautonomia, how this is not a certainty.
Thank you. So we take what we have as a blessing now.
It certainly is.
Page 196 is that. Elohai Shama Shenatata V'Teora
These are things that are limitless, of which a person enjoys the fruit of the world, while the principle remains in the world to come. These are honoring one's father and mother, engaging in deeds of compassion, arriving early for study morning and evening, dealing graciously with guests, visiting the sick, providing for the wedding couple, accompanying the dead for burial, being devoted in prayer, and making peace among people. But the study of Torah encompasses them all.
Praised are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, creator of light and darkness, who makes peace and fashions all things. In mercy you illumine the world and those who live upon it. In your goodness you daily renew creation. How numerous are your works, Adonai. In wisdom you form them all, filling the earth with your creatures. Be praised, Adonai our God, for the excellent work of your hands, and for the lights you created. May they glorify you. Shine a new light upon Zion, that we all may swiftly merit its radiance. Praised are you, Adonai, creator of all heavenly lights.
Once or twice in a lifetime, a man or woman may choose a radical leaving. Having heard, Lech Lecha, go forth. God disturbs us towards our destiny by hard events and urgent voice, which explode and confirm who we are. We don't like leaving, but God loves becoming.
As we turn now in our Siddur to page 239, page 239.
Either one?
Either one.
Emet, there is no place where you are not. Even in the wilderness, there is your word. Emet, the pen strokes of lightning, white fire, black flame, stir the soul's passion, guide our sacred way. True and enduring is Torah. Your truth for us is certain and established, now and forevermore. Like Moses, Miriam, and all Israel, we sing out and rejoice.
Ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la ya la la ya la 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 ya la 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 mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai mi chamocha nehtar b'kodesh Norat tehilot osefele Norat tehilot osefele Shira chadasha shibechu geulim L'shimcha sfat hayom Yachad kulam hodu V'himlichu ve'ameru Adonai imloch Le'olam va'ed Adonai imloch Le'olam va'ed Zur Yisrael Kuma be'ezrat Yisrael Uvdechinu mecha Yehuda ve'Yisrael Go aleinu Adonai Tzebaot Shemo Kedosh Yisrael Baruch atah Adonai Gal Yisrael. On page 242, we rise as we are able for tefillah. Adonai sifatai tiftachu fi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Belohei Avotenu Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanorah, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot v'imachot, Umevi Geula Lifnei V'neihem, Leman Shemo B'Yahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham V'Ezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechaye HaKol atah Rav Lehoshia, Mashiv HaRuach U'Morid HaGashem, Mechalkel Chaim B'Chesed, Mechaye HaKol B'Rachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim V'Rofech Olim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Michamocha Bal Gevurot, Umido Melach, Melech Memit Umechayeh, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman atah l'chayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayeh hakol. Nekadesh et shimcha ba'olam, Keshem shemakdishim oto b'shmei marom, Kakatuv ayad neviecha, V'kara zel zeh ve'amar, Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzevaot, Meloch ol haaretz, Kevodo, Adir, Adirenu, Adonai, Adonenu, Madir, Shimcha b'chol haaretz, Baruch Kevod Adonai, Mimkomo. Echad hu Eloheinu, hu Avinu hu malkeinu, hu Moshienu v'hu yashmienu, berachamav le'nei kochai. Ani Adonai Elohechem, imloch Adonai leolam, Elohai Yitzion, ledor vador. Hallelujah. Ledor vador nagid godlecha, v'lenetzach netzachim kedushatcha nakdish, v'shivchacha Eloheinu mipinu lo yamush leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai ha'el hakadosh. May be seated. As we continue on page 250 in the brackets, 250. Yismechu v'malechutecha, shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malechutecha, shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Mekadeshei, mekadeshei sheli Shabbat. Kulam yisbeu ve'yitangu mituvecha Shabbat. Yismechu ve'malechutecha, shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Yismechu ve'malechutecha, shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. V'hashvi ratzita bo v'kidashto Shabbat. Chemdad yamim oto karata Shabbat. Yismechu v'malechutecha, shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malechutecha, shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Zecher lema'aseh, lema'aseh v'reishit Shabbat. Zecher lema'aseh, lema'aseh v'reishit Shabbat. Yismechu v'malechutecha, shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malechutecha, shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. As we continue on page 255, if we could pass the microphone, either passage on the top or bottom. Page 255, the bracket. Either.
On this holy Shabbat, may we draw near to life, to peace, and to joy. May we find true rest, holiness in our deeds, worth in our study of Torah. Let us feed on the love of goodness. Let us drink from the love of goodness. Restrain our thirst for excess, and cleanse our hearts to serve life well. On this holy Shabbat, may we draw nearer in life, in peace, and in joy.
Baruch atah Adonai, she'otecha levadcha b'yir'ah la'avod. At the bottom of page, on page 257. You want to pass the microphone? Page 257.
For the expanding grandeur of creation, worlds known and unknown, galaxies beyond galaxies, filling us with awe and challenging our imaginations.
Modim anachnu lach.
For the fragile planet Earth, its times and tides, its sunsets and seasons.
Modim anachnu lach.
For the joy of human life, its wonders and surprises, its hopes and achievements.
Modim anachnu lach.
For human community, our common past and future hope, our oneness transcending all separation, our capacity to work for peace and justice in the midst of hostility and oppression.
Modim anachnu lach.
For high hopes and noble causes, for faith without fanaticism, for understanding of views not shared.
Modim anachnu lach.
For all who have labored and suffered for a fairer world, who have lived so that others might live in dignity and freedom.
Modim anachnu lach.
For human liberties and sacred rights, for opportunities to change and grow, to affirm and choose.
Modim anachnu lach.
We pray that we may live not by our fears, but by our hopes, not by our words, but by our deeds.
Blessed are you, Adonai. Your name is goodness, and you are worthy of thanksgiving. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha l'chana elehodot. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Chen v'chesed v'rachamim. Chen v'chesed v'rachamim. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Alecha. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. We continue our prayer now silently, whether we are led by the words on the pages of our Siddur through page 261, or among other prayers in this prayer book, or by those meditations and thoughts in our hearts. Shalom bimroma, huyase shalom aleinu, Ose shalom bimroma, Uyase shalom aleinu, Ve'al kol Yisrael, Ve'imeru amen. Ose shalom bimroma, Uyase shalom aleinu, Ve'al kol Yisrael, Ve'imeru amen. We turn now in our Siddur, in our prayer books, to page 364, for Seder Kriyat HaTorah, for the reading of the Torah. Jacqueline and Sari, would you come help open the ark? As we're able, we all rise. Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, Udevar Adonai mirushalayim, Baruch shenatan Torah, Torah, Baruch shenatan Torah, Torah, le'amo Yisrael, b'kedushato, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo, Gadol Adonai iti, Uneromemo Shemo Yachdav, Lecha Adonai Hagedula, V'Hagevura, V'Hatiferet, V'Hanezach, V'Hahod, Ki chol b'shamayim u'ba'aretz, Ki chol b'shamayim u'ba'aretz, Lecha Adonai hamamlacha, V'yamid na'aseh lechol rosh. Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, V'tagel haaretz. Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam u'melom, Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam u'melom, Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, V'tagel haaretz. Our Torah portion this Shabbat is called Va'era, and it comes from the book of Exodus. And I'm going to be reading a little further into this portion, which talks about the first plagues, the first, I think, 7 plagues. And I'm going to be reading from chapter 9 of Exodus, verse 1 and following. And if you'd like to follow along, you can do so on page 439, and that's in the Torah commentary, the larger book in front of you. Exodus chapter 9, verse 1 and following. And Dr. Rudolph, that's both of them looked up. Would you like the honor of the Aliyah with your sons as your family is here for this Shabbat? I'm going to call you by Hebrew name. Your Hebrew name is?
Yitzhak ben Moshe.
Mendel ben Yitzhak. Yonatan ben Yitzhak.
Okay. What's your Ben?
Yitzhak ben Moshe.
Okay. Nala Amod, Yitzhak ben Moshe, Mendel ben Yitzhak, Yonatan ben Yitzhak, Levarech al HaTorah.
Baruch
Start with Baruch Hu et Adonai. Baruch Hu et
Adonai Hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Leolam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim. V'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'torah.
Amen. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe, Bo el Paro, V'dibarta elav ko amar Adonai Elohei ha'ivrim, Shalach et ami v'yavduni, ki im ma'en ata l'shaleach v'odcha machazik bam. Hine yad Adonai hoya b'miknecha asher basadeh, ba susim, ba chamorim, ba gemalim, ba bakar, uvatzon, dever, kaved ma'od. V'hifla Adonai bein miknei Yisrael uvein miknei Mitzrayim, v'lo yamut mikol ivnei Yisrael davar. Vayasem Adonai moed lemor, machar ya'aseh Adonai hadavar hazeh ba'aretz. Vayas Adonai et hadavar hazeh mimocharat vayamot kol miknei Mitzrayim umimiknei bnei Yisrael lo met echad. Vayishlach Paro v'hine lo met miknei Yisrael ad echad. Vayichbad lev Paro v'lo shilach et ha'am.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'torah.
Amen. We turn our thoughts and prayers now to those who are in need of healing, and so we turn in our Siddur to page 371 in the middle of the page. And if you are watching us through the blessing of technology, we invite you to share the names of those whom you're thinking of, whether they're in the need of healing of the body or a healing of the spirit. Add those names to the chat at this time if you choose. And those who are here in the sanctuary can add names after we extend our blessings to these people in our extended Adith Emmanuel family. We pray for healing for Elaine Moskowitz, Sam Rosenberg, Linda Drachman, Chaim Ben David, Eileen Davison, Craig Davison, Hugh Morton, Art Bond, Roberta Levine, Cy Kliansky, Jordan Maverick Steinberg, Deanna Amariello, Lisa Galda, Brian Zabel, Ed Crosby, Jonathan Burr, Myra Kaplan, Jeff Schaefer, Lulu Rivuela, Marion Gwertz, Aaron Tepper, Lily Tepper, Louis Alahat, Mary Parker, Tricia Tepper, Carol Schaefer, Mary Mednitsky, Jocelyn Jackson, Jen Jones, Shirley Friedlander, Michael Infanti, Gary Garnick, Ann Marsden, Rick Ulrich, Ileana Cohen, and others whose names we should add at this time. Baruch atah Adonai, Rofei HaCholim. Mi sheberach Avotenu Mekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mi sheberach imotenu mekor habracha labotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. We now rise as we're able, as we lift and dress Torah. Larry? V'zot haTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei b'nei Yisrael al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe. V'zot haTorah asher sam Moshe. V'zot haTorah. V'zot haTorah asher sam Moshe. V'zot haTorah lifnei b'nei Yisrael. V'zot haTorah al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe. V'zot haTorah. V'zot haTorah asher sam Moshe. V'zot haTorah. V'zot haTorah asher sam Moshe. V'zot haTorah. V'zot haTorah. May be seated. As we turn to our Haftarah reading for this morning in Va'era, which you can find on page 696. Page 696, our Haftarah comes from the book of Ezekiel, chapter 28, verse 25 and following. And first we read the blessings. If you'd like to follow along, we're on page 372 in the Siddur. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nvi'im tovim v'ratza b'divreihem hane'emarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'torah uv'Moshe avdo uv'Yisrael amo uv'nvi'ei ha'emet v'tzedek.
Thus says the eternal God, when I have gathered the house of Israel from the peoples among whom they have been scattered, and have made manifest my holiness, there in the sight of the nations they shall dwell on their own soil, which I gave to my servant Jacob. They shall dwell on it in safety and build houses and plant vineyards. When I execute judgments on all surrounding people who have shown them contempt, they shall dwell in safety. and they shall know that I, the Eternal, am their God. On the 12th day of the 10th month of the 10th year, the word of the Eternal came to me, saying, Mortal, set your face against Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and prophesy against him and against all Egypt. Speak these words. Thus says the Eternal God, Behold, I am against you, Pharaoh, king of Egypt. You are like the great crocodile crouching in its river branches, thinking, the river is mine. I made it for myself. I will put hooks through your jaws and make the fish of your streams stick to your scales. I will pull you out of your river branches with all the fish of your river branches sticking to your scales. I will throw you out into the wilderness, you and all the fish of your river branches. You shall fall on dry ground, ungathered and unburied. I have given you food of the beasts of the earth and the birds of the sky. Then all who dwell in Egypt shall know that I am the Eternal. For you were a staff of reed to the house of Israel. When they took hold of you, you splintered, cutting their palms. When they leaned on you, you broke, rattling their bones. Therefore, says the Eternal God, Behold, I will bring a sword upon you and deprive you of people and beasts, because you thought, the river is mine, I made it. Egypt will be a dissolution, a ruin, and they shall know that I am the Eternal. Therefore, I am against you and your streams. I will make of the land of Egypt an utterly ruined desolation from Migdol to Aswan, all the way to the border of Cush. No human foot shall pass through it, no animal foot shall pass through it. It shall be uninhabited for 40 years. I will make Egypt a desolation, surpassing other desolate lands. Her cities will lie desolate for 40 years, surpassing other ruined cities. I will scatter the Egyptians among the nations and disperse them among the countries. For thus says the Eternal God, at the end of 40 years, I will gather the Egyptians from the peoples among whom they were scattered, and I will restore Egypt's fortunes and let them return to the land they came from, the land of Petros. There they shall be a lowly kingdom, the lowest of all the kingdoms, one that no longer exalts itself among the nations. I will make them too few ever again to rule other nations. Never again shall Egypt be the reliance of the house of Israel. It shall be a reminder of the wrong they did to it. Then they shall know that I am the Eternal God. On the first day of the first month of the 27th year, the word of the Eternal came to me, saying, Mortal, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, has made his army work so hard in a war against Tyre that all their heads were made bald and their shoulders rubbed bare. But neither he nor his army got any reward from Tyre for all his hard labor against it. Therefore, says the Eternal God, I am giving Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, the land of Egypt. He shall carry off its wealth to spoil it and plunder it. It shall be his army's wages. As his reward for which he labored, I am giving him the land of Egypt for what they have done for me, says the Eternal God. On that day, I will make the house of Israel strong, and I will give you courage to speak in their midst. Then they shall know that I am the Eternal. Courage to speak. No, that's it.
Second blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, tzur kol haolamim, tzaddik bechol hadorot, ha'el ha'ne'eman ha'omer ve'oseh, hamdaber u'mkayim, shekol devarav emet v'tzedek, al ha'torah v'al ha'avodah, v'al hanvi'im, v'al yom ha-Shabbat hazeh, shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu, likdusha v'limnucha, lechavod ultifaret, al hakol Adonai Eloheinu, anachnu modim lach, umbarachim otach, yitbarach shimcha befi kol chai tamid leolam va'ed, baruch ata Adonai, mekadesh ha-Shabbat. And so now we turn to words of Devar Torah. And let me ask you a question. Has anyone ever called you stubborn? You can just nod your head if someone has called you stubborn. So we're going to look at this concept a little bit more closely. I'll share with you a little bit about Pharaoh and some other teachings. This is the Torah portion that starts the plagues in Egypt. And what happens to Pharaoh after each plague? He at first might allow the Hebrew slaves to go free, and then he changes his mind, and the expression that we hear most often is he hardens his heart, right? And so I'll share with you the translation that I read this morning. The plague that we read from the Torah was about dever, like the cattle disease. So God said to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh and say to him, 'Thus says the Eternal, the God of the Hebrews, let my people go to worship me. For if you refuse to let them go and continue to hold them, then the land of Adonai will strike your livestock in the fields, the horses, the asses, the camels, the cattle, and the sheep, with a very severe pestilence.'" Dever. "But the Eternal will make a distinction between the livestock of Israel and the livestock of the Egyptians, so that nothing shall die of all that belongs to the Israelites. The Eternal has fixed the time. Tomorrow, the Eternal God will do this thing to the land." And God did so the next day. All the livestock of the Egyptians died, but of the livestock of the Israelites, not a beast died. And when Pharaoh inquired, he found that not a head of the livestock of Israel had died, yet Pharaoh remained stubborn, v'yichbad lev paro, and he would not let the people go. Pharaoh remained stubborn. So we're now at the fifth plague. Yeah, the fifth plague. V'yichbad lev paro, that's where the expression in the translation is Pharaoh remained stubborn. But the very literal translation, v'yichbad, kaved, heavy, lev, heart, paro. Pharaoh's heart grew heavy. Throughout the 10 plagues, there are a variety of Hebrew and English expressions which describe Pharaoh after he changes his mind or has a change of heart, if you will. As I learned from Rabbi Avital Hochstein, Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch suggests 3 types of language that the Torah uses to describe this state of Pharaoh's. 1, hard. Hard being rigid, without registering any influence, with being influenced by anything that passes us, a hard heart. Another is the word we see in our Torah reading this morning, heavy, kaved, being a person of weight, able to be influenced, but with a significant gap between the actual impression and the willingness to act based on it. If you will, heavy being like sluggish. And then a third one, strong, chazak, steadfast, fully opposing to submit despite a full recognition, totally obliterating the influence. So it's this second description of being heavy, kaved, and its different interpretations of being sluggish or stubborn that we will consider in our discussion today. First, I want to share with you a very interesting lesson that I learned. I discovered in this article in South Africa's Jewish Life, written by Robert Sussman, which he had learned from, he was attending a class and a man was visiting. I'm not sure if this man was a visiting scholar, but he never gave the name of this man. And it reveals something about Pharaoh's own religion and this idea of the heart being heavy. So the ancient Egyptians believed that after a person died, he would be subjected to a test to determine whether his soul was deserving of an afterlife. At the entrance of the afterworld, a god by the name of Anubis, who had a humanoid body and the head of a jackal, would stand holding a set of scales in his hand. The heart of the deceased would be placed by Anubis on one of the sides of those scales, you know, the kind like this, and then it would be weighed against a single ostrich feather, which belonged to Ma'at, who was the goddess of truth. And if the heart was as light as the feather that sat opposite the scales, then the soul of the deceased would be granted immortality and escorted to Osiris, the god of the afterlife. If, however, the heart was heavier than the ostrich feather, then the soul of the deceased would be utterly destroyed. It's very interesting because we're talking about heart being weighty, being heavy. Eagerly awaiting the outcome of this weigh-in was a demon named Amit, whose body was composed of parts from a lion, a hippopotamus, and a crocodile, which are three of the most dangerous animals known to ancient Egyptians. And that animal, this demon Amit, would gladly devour the unworthy hearts. So according to Pharaoh's own religion, how he made his own heart heavy, certainly heavier than an ostrich feather, or maybe that's my subjective interpretation, Pharaoh did not deserve an afterlife. I found that story and that research fascinating about the Egyptians' belief of what happens after you die and this whole idea of the heart being weighed, and how Pharaoh, as we in our Torah describe Pharaoh as having a heavy heart. Back to the verses that we read today in the Torah, the Dever, this pestilence. Afterward, we find that Pharaoh's heart grew heavy, and he grew sluggish and uncaring. He was not motivated, and he was too weighed down, unmoved, if you will, to release the Hebrew slaves. So for our discussion, I invite us to consider what interpretation of Pharaoh's emotional state speaks to you. Is it heart? Is the heart being hard, rigid, without taking anything influencing on it? Is it heavy, being weighty and sluggish? Is it strong, steadfast, and not being able to be influenced? So is there a particular emotional state of Pharaoh's heart which you like better? Hard, heavy, or strong? That's one thing. And then we describe Pharaoh as being stubborn. We could also describe God as being stubborn, though we don't use those words. Is being stubborn a good trait or a bad trait? How so? And give an example. So do you like hard, heavy, or strong? And is stubborn a good trait or a bad trait? How so? Can you give an example? And so I'm not sure, is the microphone here? Okay, thank you. Who would like to chime in and share your thoughts?
The example that comes to my mind is the United States Congress.
The United States Congress comes to mind, okay?
You talk about being stubborn. You know, most of them are unbending in their ways, and there's no sense of compromise. And of course, you never saw a compromise in Pharaoh either. It was, even when he finally let them go, he came back to wanting to, bring them back or to kill them all. So he never really changed from being hard, being heavy, whatever it might be.
So however you describe that Pharaoh's heaviness, hardness, his stubbornness, he said yes, then he said no, and then they couldn't go. And then when he finally let them go, even then he changed his mind and pursued after them. So his stubbornness endured.
And his stubbornness killed the entire Egyptian army.
And his stubbornness killed the Egyptian army. Other thoughts?
it's interesting that going way back to this ancient story, that's the connection between one's attitude and one's heart. You gotta have heart. Put your heart and soul into it. They related the heart as an organ that had to do with your outlook on life, or the way you received other people. And it's just interesting how that relationship, I never really thought about it, almost till this minute, was there all the time. Mike and I were having a discussion this morning about how monotonous and insistent God is about getting all 10 plagues out in the open. You know, he could have done it with fewer plagues, but God hardens Pharaoh's heart. God, in other words, had control over the whole situation. He didn't have to wait till the 7th plague or the 8th plague or the 10th plague to let them go. He wanted them all. And I was just sitting thinking, now here's my speculation. He wanted to make sure that the Egyptians knew how defeated they were and that they weren't going to rise again. He wanted to give them all 10 barrels of his cannon. And that's why he hardened Pharaoh's heart. He wanted to get the plagues out. That's what seems to be a theme that comes back to me from the story. So yes, Pharaoh's heart was hardened. He was a no good Nick. He, and hardening the heart, it's an expression, that comes way back.
So we still use that expression, we can look to the Torah to see the way heart is used toward attitude, and we still even use that expression in our world today, and that God was determined to give all 10 plagues to be sure that the Egyptians knew that they were defeated. Other thoughts?
Just that, a brief thought that being stubborn is probably not good, and I think that's the lesson.
The
of
lesson is
Pharaoh
being stubborn is not good.
It's not good, and I don't know. We were discussing in Torah study about the first 5 plagues. Pharaoh had hardened his own heart, and then the last 5 plagues, God hardened.
Right, so if we look closely at the Torah text, it's very interesting to note that what you just said, Michael, the first 5 plagues Pharaoh hardened his own heart. And then the last 5, it's God who hardened Pharaoh's heart. And there's all kinds of interpretations as to why is that. You talked about God's persistence of wanting to get all the plagues for a particular reason. That's another Devar Torah. Other thoughts? Is there any times being stubborn is good? I heard 2 little chuckles here. I heard a probably, and I think I saw a nod. History tells us yes. When you're right, so. I'm thinking about the women's right to vote, right? I'm also thinking, the idea of stubbornness as resilience and being persistent. And I can't imagine that I would not have the opportunity to vote, just like everybody else 18 years and up in this country. And I can credit those who were stubborn and said the law as it is wrong in not giving this kind of equality. And so I see that kind of stubbornness as a positive. I don't know, maybe somebody would describe, well, that's not really being stubborn, that's being something else, fill in the adjective.
I work with pediatrics and children, and sometimes these little ones, like I think their strength and stubbornnness within them in the ICU and when they're working through medical conditions. I think when somebody has, I would always say stubbornness may also cross over into determination. Like they're fighting for their little lives in there, but then if you have somebody a little older and they set a goal and they have determination, and sometimes they have to give up a lot of things, personal things, to get to that goal, possibly through medical school or law school or just something they have set. So I just kind of see it a little bit different, that little streak of stubbornness may actually be a really good thing that God is giving them to get somebody through something.
So stubbornness like determination. Other thoughts to share? If it weren't for stubbornness, there wouldn't be the state of Israel. Elsewhere in the Torah, the people Israel are referred to as a stiff-necked people. And I think that description of stiff-necked is another adjective connected to stubbornness. So from the back from the time of Torah into the 20th century, being a stubborn people, if you will. So there are many times that each of us might exhibit traits, or maybe not so many, times when each of us might exhibit traits of sluggishness or stubbornness or rigidness or steadfastness, and stubbornness can be interpreted as a negative trait. However, there are times when being stubborn can be associated with that determination, that perseverance, that persistence. And those are traits that we exhibit to bring out greater good in our world. May our stubbornness continue to be for the sake of good. Shabbat Shalom. As we turn now in our Siddur to page 374, as we are able, we rise as we return the Torah to the Ark. Jacqueline, Sari, come on and help me. Etz chaim hi lemachazikim ba v'tomcheha meushar deracheha darchei noam b'chol netivoteha Shalom, Hashivenu Adonai, Elecha v'nashuva, Kadesh, Kadesh Yameinu, Kekedem. We remain standing and turn now to page 586 in the brackets at the bottom of the page. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, v'latet gedula liotzer bereshit, shelo asanu kigoyei haratzot, velo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'goraleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, Umishtachavim umodim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu v'ne'emar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz vayom hahu yeh Adonai echad Ushemo echad. Our thoughts turn now to those who are no longer with us, and so we turn in our Siddur to pages 598 and 599. We think of our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us. And so for this particular group, I want to announce with sadness, if you haven't seen or heard the news, the death of Frank Gardner, Bruce and Sarah's son. He died just this past week. And we can talk about more at the Kiddush. We also think of those who died during this period of Shiva and Shloshim. Robert Perloff, uncle of Rob and Leah Kaplan. Robin E. Helfat, sister-in-law of Mark Helfat. As well as those who died at the season in years past. We mark their yard sites on the Shabbat. Alvin Brown, Carl Cohen, Anita Einstein, Alvin Elner, Hyman Feldman, Rebecca Goldman, Deborah Katz, Ellie Kay, Dr. Frank Lasella, Stanton Oliver, Jenny Silver, Mildred Solat, Alice Spradlin, Stanley N. Starbecker, Robert Strumwasser, George Weiss, Claire Zeit. And if there are other names that you would like to add, if you're watching through the blessing of technology, feel free to add them in the chat at this time. And for those here in the sanctuary, feel free to add a name as my hand passes through the sanctuary. And those whom we have drawn into our hearts with our own, Zichronam Livracha, may their memories be for blessing. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'alma divrach hirutei v'amlik malchutei, v'chayechon uvyomechon u'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, v'agala uvizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach le'olam omei amaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudasha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechemata, ta'amiran v'yalma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. And let us say, amen. So before we decide on our closing song, to whom are we giving our thanks for Kiddush and Hal? So everyone is welcome after the service to join in the social hall for Kiddush and our closing song, do we have any requests? Requests from those under the B'nai Mitzvah age are also welcome. And if you're looking, where do I even think of ideas? Ein Keloheinu, that's what I heard. Okay, page 626, 626. Ein Keloheinu, Ein Kadonenu, Ein Chemalkeinu, Ein Chemoshienu, Mi Keloheinu, Mi Chadonenu, Mi Chemalkeinu, Mi Chemoshienu, No Del Eloheinu, No Del Adonenu, No Del Malkeinu, No Del Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu. Shabbat Shalom.